Hello dear students, how are you? I hope you all have seen my yesterday videos and you all have done your work that was given in my video. In my yesterday video, we have done the session 1, that is the method of the communication. That are the sessions of the part A. We are doing the part A of your book, and before holidays we have done the web applications that comes in the part B of your book. In these days we are doing the part A, and part A में आपका आता है communication skills. And in this communication skill, in my yesterday video I told you about the session 1, that was the method of communication. There was the 3 methods of communication: verbal, non-verbal and the visual. Plus I have told you about how some key points which you will keep in mind when you are giving the interview. And next thing I have told you that how you can present your presentation, what points you should keep in mind when you are giving the presentation on any topics. These 5 things we have read in our yesterday's video. In my today's video I will tell you about the session 2 and the session 3. Session 2 is about the communication cycle and the session 3 about the communication barrier. Now let's come with me. Now we are starting our the session 2 communication cycle. Now let's start our next topic, communication cycle. First question arises in our mind that what is communication cycle? The cycles you have read about the water cycle. What is the cycle? The process that continuously goes on, that is known as the cycle. Similarly, what is the communication cycle? When there is a 2 person in the communication, one is sender and one is the receiver. Sender is sending his messages, sending his views, presenting his opinion to the receiver. Receiver receiving it, and it interpret that opinion and his views of the sender, and in return he gives its response or the feedback to the sender again. Then sender takes the response from the receiver, and again in response to the receiver he gives his own opinion again to the receiver. Then this process goes on, and this process is known as the communication cycle. I think that is clear to you. The cycle goes on when the sender receives the message, sends the messages, receiver receives it and again sends message to the sender, and this process goes on for a long time. That is known as the communication cycle. The next topic is principles of the communication cycles. What are the principles of the communication cycle? First principle is, when you are communicating with each other, your language should be simple so that it will be easily understandable by each one. So language should be simple when we are communicating. Next, it should be definite. Your communication should be very definite. Definite means your aim should be clear behind this communication. What is the main purpose of your communications? That should be clear to you. Next is complete and concise. Your communication should be complete and concise. Complete means your communication should be, your data should be complete, and that should be up to date. That should be a point to point. We should not create the unnecessary data, we should not do the unnecessary argument in our communications. That should be up to point. Next is the appropriate medium. What medium we are using in it, that should be very appropriate. Appropriate medium should be used in your communication through which you are doing the communication. That medium should be very appropriate. For example, if you are talking to other one, you are communicating through your telephones, while you are doing the written communications, you are doing the oral communication, you are doing on communication on the telephones, you are speaking in front of the camera, whatever you are using the medium, that should be very appropriate. Next is courteous. The sender and the receiver both should be courteous. Both should be polite to each other to create a healthy relationship. When we are doing the communication, sender and receiver both should be very polite to each other, and we should be courteous. That would create a healthy environment, and healthy environment will create a healthy communication. The next is, what are the elements of the communication cycles? Now the elements of the communication cycle is, first element for the communication is sender. Firstly, sender is the person who is sending his messages to the receivers, who is presenting his views and the opinions. Second is the messages. Second, messages is the information that is sent by the sender to the receiver. Next is the encoding. Encoding is used by the sender to send his informations to the person. That can be in the written form, that can be in the oral form, and what type of encoding he is using to sending the messages. That is encoding. Next is the channel. Channel is the medium through which a sender is sending his messages to the receiver. The channels is the medium through which he is sending. For example, sender wants to do the oral communications, then the channel is the oral communication through a telephone. Then the telephone wires is known as the channels to send the messages to the receiver. Next is the receiver. Receiver is the person who receives the messages from the sender. Next is decoding. Decoding is that is done by the receiver to decode the messages that is sent by the sender. He interprets the messages, he understands the messages according to his or her perceptions and the circumstances, and at last he gives his response as a feedback to the sender. So this process goes on. Sender send the messages by encoding through a channel, and receivers then decode and then send the feedback to the senders, and again sends the messages to the receivers. Then this communication cycle goes on, and these 7 are the 6 main elements of the communication cycles. Now up to here, what two questions comes into your exams, that what is the communication cycles and what are the elements of the communication cycles. This is the important question of this chapter. What is the communication cycle and what are the elements of the communication cycle? Now the next topic is feedback. What is the feedback? What is the feedback? Feedback is the response that is given by the receiver to the sender. That is the most important part of the communications. When the receiver sends the feedback, it will be very helpful for the receiver, or it will be very helpful for the sender, because feedback is of the two types, that will be of the positive and that will be of the negative also. If it is positive feedback, then that will boost up the confidence of the speaker, or confidence of the sender who is communicating to you. And if it is a negative feedback, it will tell us the points that where he can improve his communication, where he is lacking in his communications, and how he and she can improve his communication. So feedback is the most important part of the communications, and positive and negative feedback both are helpful to a sender. Both are helpful for a sender. For example, when you are in a class and you are doing something, a teacher has give you an assignment, and if you have done it very beautifully, you have done it very clearly, and then teacher has praised you in the class, that will increase your confidence, and you feel proud on you because it is a positive feedback. But if you have done some mistakes and teacher has told you that you are lacking in these areas and you have to improve in that areas, by getting this negative feedback you can improve your creativity, and you can improve your mistakes also. That will also help you to build that will also help you to clear your mistakes, and it will also helpful for you to rectify your mistakes. So positive and negative both feedback are helpful, but feedback should be must in your communication. If you does not give the feedback, then your communication will not be so much effective. You cannot improve in yourself. Now the next is, what is the importance of the feedback? As I told you, in positive and negative feedback, these main points comes. What are the importance of the feedback? First, it will improve the performance. When you get the feedback from the receivers, it will tell you that in which areas you can improve yourself, and by improving yourselves, it will increase your performance, and your work will be very effective and efficient. You will be very efficient in your work also. So it will improve your performance. Next is motivation. When you will get the feedback, and it is a positive feedback. It will motivate you and boost up you, and you will be motivated to do more work in your fields, and that will be very helpful for you. Next, it is a tool for continued learning. That feedback is also a tool for the continued learning. As you get the feedback, you are improving yourself, and you are in the process of the learning. So that your learning process will be continued day by day. So this is the importance of the feedback. Now our next topic, that is the descriptive feedback. Feedback is also in the form of the descriptive feedback. When you giving the feedback in a more detail to the persons, that is the descriptive feedback. I will take example of the descriptive feedback. At the last of your school sessions, you get a report card that is given by your teachers. That is the descriptive feedback, in which marks of your all the subjects are given to you in a written form, and some remarks are given to you about your discipline, about your sincerity, about your intelligence in the class. So this is a descriptive feedback. In details, all the points about you is written in your report card. um, Descriptive feedback, that is also of the two types, that is the specific feedback and the non-specific feedback. When the teachers give you the feedback in a more details, for example, when the remarks are given in your report card that there is a need of improvement in the maths and the science, it means this is a specific feedback. You are getting to know that in which fields you have to do the hard work. And non-specific, if the teacher has written just need improvement, that is non-specific feedback, because you doesn't know that in which field you have to do the improvement, in which subjects you are lacking behind, and teacher are telling you about about doing the improvement in which subjects. That is the non-specific feedback. So these are the two feedbacks of the descriptive specific feedback and the non-specific feedback. Now we are starting our session 3. We have just completed the session 2, that is the communication cycle. Now I am starting the session 3 of your employability skills unit 1. That is the communication barriers. What is the communication barrier? When there is an obstacle between the sender and the receivers, that is known as the barrier. When there is a wall between the sender and the receivers, when the receiver is not getting the information that is sending by the senders, that due to some obstacles, that is known as the communication barrier. Now these barriers is of the two types. These barriers is of two types, but internal barriers and the external barrier. What is the external barrier? External barriers is due to our state of minds. That is due to the state of mind of the sender and the receivers. Due to the state of mind, which obstacles, yeah, which difficulties comes in the communications, that are known as the internal barriers. These are the points about the internal barriers. First is fatigue. If the sender is giving the information, the sender is communicating to the receiver, and receiver is not feeling well, he is very fit, he is feeling fatigue, he is very fatigued to that, and then he is not able to receive the communications. That will lose his interest, that and he will not be interested in the communication. When he is not interested and he is fatigued and he is not excited to listen the communication, to see the information that is sent by the sender, then that communication will not be a healthy communications. Next barrier is the poor listening skill. If the listening skills of the receiver is very poor, he is never interested to listen for a long time, that will also create a barrier in the communication. Next is difference in the perceptions and the viewpoint. That is perception and the viewpoints. There is so much differences in the viewpoints and the perceptions of the receiver. Various type of persons are listening, and everyone has his own perception and own viewpoint. So it depends on the receiver what is his perception and what is its viewpoint, and how he takes the information that is sent by the sender, and according to that he will give the feedback to the sender. And biasness, sometimes when the sender when the receiver is biased to the sender, and he will also make the sender's communication very unhealthy. So these are the barriers, but we can overcome these barriers by following these points that make your communication interesting. We should always try to make our communication interesting. For example, if I am presenting a video in front of you and you are feeling it bored, and if I will give some animation, I will insert some animations in it, some images in it, then it will be interested, then it will create an interest of you in my videos. So we should make our communication interesting and empathetic also. Sender and receiver both should be empathetic to each other. If the sender is presenting something, he is communicating, the receivers should give the proper attention to the sender also. And a trust, there should be a trust level between the sender and the receivers also. Plus good listening skills. When there is a communication and everyone is listening, so their communication skills will be very good, so that otherwise communication will not be very good. And there should be the unbiasedness between the sender and the receiver also. By following these points, we can remove these internal barriers. Now I will tell you about the external barriers. Next is your external barrier. We have just read about the internal barrier. Now there is the external barriers. What is the external barriers? External barriers are the noise and the distractions. That is the when you are giving the when you are doing the communication, yeah, when you are giving the speech, then there is the noise that is in your surroundings that creates the barrier in the communication. Next is the physical barriers. Physical barrier means when some signals are not coming, you are doing the communicating. For example, when we are doing the Google Meet, and sometimes signals are not coming, you said, ma'am, your voice is not coming, ma'am, your picture is not coming, you are not visible to us. So these are due to the weak signals. These are the physical barriers in our communication. We are doing the communicating with each other, and these weak signals create the physical barriers in it. Next is the physical disabilities. Some people have the hearing problem, some is having the speech problem. These type of the disability also create a disturbance in the communications. Then how we can overcome these types of the barriers? There are the 3 points. By using this, we can remove these type of the barriers. First is use the proper communication channels. Whenever we are doing the setup for the communications, you should use the proper communications channels. You should check it, that should be in the correct form, that should be in the accurate form. For example, when you are using the mic, that should be very that there should not be any problems in your mic, in your cameras also. So you should use the proper communication channel. Next, when you are having the physical disability, for example, some are having the listening problem, some are having the speaking problem. So how we can remove these barriers? So we should use we should use the sign language and some written communication. There should alternate of this should be there. Next, physical barriers use the alternate means of the communication. Physical barrier means that there is a weak signal, so we should have a Wi-Fi in our house so that our signals should not be very weak. So by following these things, we can remove these external barriers. So in today's sessions, we have read about the 2 topics, that is the communication cycles and the communication barriers. Now at last, I am giving you 2 questions that you have to write down in your notebook. Today I will also send you all the notes of these 3 sessions also. By using these notes, you can write down these 5 questions in your notebook. First 3 I have given you in my yesterday video, and in my today video I am giving these 2 questions. What is the communication cycle and what are the elements of the communication? And the second, and the next question, that is the 5th question, that is how many types of communication barriers are there, and explain each and how we can overcome these barriers. Barriers, 2 types I have told you, internal and external. Firstly, write down about these barriers and how we can overcome these barriers. These are the question number 4 and 5, and 3 questions I have given to you in my yesterday video. So it's my request to you, please complete your notebook side by side. Otherwise, you will lag behind in your work and it will be very difficult for you to complete your work after that. Thank you and have a nice day.